Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Money Healing Podcast. This is a new month, June, and this whole month on the Money Healing Podcast is themed as Attune June. I love rhyming. I love rhyming so much. And it's going to be about money, spirituality, emotional healing, and bringing in more harmony, alignment, and balance with really our higher self, and how to make our finances how to like get our finances to support these evolutions and these spiritual growths. And in this context, I just, I need to name things so that we're all on the same page. Attunement in this context is really about aligning our energy, our thoughts, and our actions with our higher self and the universe. And it's really a state of harmony where we are in sync with our true nature and with the flow of life. Because when we are attuned, we are more intuitive, we are more mindful, we are more present, and from that space, we can make way more expansive decisions that are in alignment with ourselves and in alignment with the higher good. And in this first episode of our Attune June series, I invited one of the listeners of the Money Healing Podcast to help me talk about spiritual awakenings. Their name is Jen, and they are one of the listeners who won a free money coaching session with me last month. Jen is a nervous system mentor, and they work with people through their spiritual awakenings, helping them reconnect with their intuition and their authenticity. So Jen is a perfect guest for this, and I am honored that you are here. And what I also noticed about your work, because I follow you on Instagram, is that your work goes deeper than that. There is this like wake up and fuck up the system kind of energy or element to your work. So tell us more
Yeah.
about yourself, and tell us more about how you came to this work, and tell us more about this like wake up and fuck up the system energy that is, that infuses everything that you do.
Well, hello everyone. I'm Jen, and I think this is something that's been in me from a young age. Like I've always rebelled against my parents, rebelled against school. Not like I was a good student, but I was constantly questioning things. Why do we have to sit still? Why do we have to do this? So I think it's been very much inside of me for a long time, and I've always been very much interested in like conspiracy theories and trying to prove the world wrong, or prove the narrative
Mhm.
wrong, let's say. Um, so I considered myself woke for a while, and then in 2020 during the pandemic, I went through a really unexpected spiritual awakening that led me down a deep path of healing. Before that, I'd been suffering with anxiety, depression, you name
Mm.
it. I had been suffering with it for many, many years. And then this spiritual awakening, like I said, led me down this path of self-discovery and trying to figure out, what life meant. And eventually my path took me to nervous system healing. And I think that's when I really
Mhm.
blossomed.
Mhm.
I how can I put this? During the actual spiritual awakening itself, I felt very connected with spirit and spirituality and these kind of concepts. But doing the nervous system work and working through the trauma and getting deep into my own body, I think that's when I connected with what you might
Yeah.
say the higher self or my authentic self,
Mhm.
my soul. So that's what got me there.
Thank
That's
you
what
for
led me here.
that. I kind of want to put an asterisk to the word higher self. I don't really like prescribe to that term. I like the authentic self. I do
Yeah.
money archetypes, and in money archetypes speak is more that magician energy, or like the energy of self, capital S.
Yeah.
But the higher self, just, I don't know. It's just, I use it because, sometimes we use words that just so other people can understand, right? But like, it's not
Yeah. Yeah.
something,
Yeah. No,
I
no,
don't like sit
jargon.
there and go like, where are you, higher self? Because like you said, it's within us. But when we say it's higher self, it's like, is it behind me? Like, is it on top of me? Like, where is it?
It's
Somewhere,
above you
right?
somewhere, no?
So it's nice to feel like the concept of higher self is actually within us. And that can make things way easier when you're like, oh, it's inside of me. Oh,
Yeah, I think for me the understanding is like it's the me underneath all of the
yes.
conditioning that has been put on me as a result of my
Mm-hmm.
upbringing, society, the school, all of the systems. Like it's the me that I was born as, because I was born, we were all
Yep.
born pure, but then we get fucked up
Yep.
by the system. And for me, that's the higher self or the
Yeah.
authentic
Like
self.
you pre fuck up. Preconditioning, really.
Yeah,
To be correct here, right?
yeah,
So tell us a
yeah,
little bit
yeah,
more
yeah.
about your personal spiritual awakening. Where were you? Where were you living? Because I know that now you live in Spain, but where were you? What was happening? Like, paint us a picture and take us through what happened. Because I'm very happy to talk about mine afterwards because mine really was rough. So yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I listened to your podcast recently, going through yours. So yeah, yeah. Well, I
Hmm.
was still in Spain, but I was in Barcelona. Now I'm in
Hmm.
another part of Spain. So I'd moved to Spain to Barcelona in 2019. And I moved there with my partner. I started a new job as a teacher. I'd never taught before. I was in a new country, new language. There was so much going on. I broke up with my partner, and then we ended up in the lockdown, and I confined by
Mm.
myself. And I think at that time I felt like, oh, I didn't realize how much I actually needed to stop and process the breakup, the change of country, the new job, and all of these things. So I actually really enjoyed that time of just
Hmm.
being with myself, not feeling like I had to meet friends or be here or there, to just slow down a bit during that time to fill the gaps. I was doing a bit more yoga than usual, some meditation, but not actively seeking anything out there, And then once we finished the confinement and we were allowed out, at that point I did feel like perhaps I do need some socialization, because I'd spent 2 months talking to my cats. So which maybe led me into some kind of craziness anyway. But my friend invited me to a
Hmm.
Kundalini
Hmm.
activation process, energy healing
Hmm.
session. I don't know if you've
Yep,
heard about it.
definitely.
CAP, they call it. Yeah. I went along. I had no idea what it was, but I thought, you know what, it's a chance to get out. And in that session, I had a really, really intense energetic
Hmm.
experience where I felt like I went back to when I was being born. There
Whoa.
was like lots of a big like oh, it was weird. It was really weird. There was like a flash of bright white light, and my body moved into like a happy
Hmm.
baby pose, in yoga, where like a baby would grab their legs, and I was rolling on the floor, and I felt like covered in this love, this
Oh.
light, and it was a beautiful experience, but at the same time a bit unsettling. And I remember like comforting myself, saying, you've taken no drugs, you've not drank or eaten anything as you came in, so this must be natural somehow. Um, I don't think this is supposed to happen in these sessions. I think you're supposed to just, have a bit of an experience and go home. But for me, that experience never
Uh-huh.
ended. Like I
Yeah.
never come down. I started from that point, like seeing energy, and um, I was constantly like having kriyas, which are related with Kundalini awakenings, where your body's just
Hmm.
randomly shaking. I was like seeing the future, crossing timelines, having voices in my head, like so much going on. So none of this made
Must have
any
been very
sense to me
scary at the time,
whatsoever.
huh?
So
It was
it was
weird,
weird.
yeah.
It was weird because at these points you have to be careful who
Hmm.
you tell
Definitely.
certain
That's my
things to. Because
experience as
I
well.
told one friend, and he's like, "Yeah, yeah, yeah." One friend was like, "I think you should see a
Oh.
doctor," and I was like, "But I know what's going to happen if I go and see a doctor." So I tried to write it out. I really like got fixated in things like breath work. You think
Hmm.
spiritual awakening, spiritual practices. So I meditated constantly. I was doing energy work. I was doing breath work, and this just led me down a path of, um, I would say, some kind of
Okay.
psychosis, because I arrived at the point where I felt like I wasn't really able to continue with normal life. It became very overwhelming
Oh
for
my
me to go
goodness.
to the
Okay. Yeah.
shops. I was working as a teacher at that time, and I had so much like energy and electricity going through my body that every time I would like touch the children, I was electrocuting them, and or I would turn on the lights would break. There was
Wow.
just so much going on. It was weird. It was really weird. Um, but on the other side of that, I think I was also really discovering who
Mhm.
I was, stepping back from everything I'd known and reevaluating my life, my friendships. And a big theme of that was reevaluating my relationship with
Mm,
money. It just seems, I think it seems to go
definitely.
hand in hand with
Definitely.
awakenings. Like it comes
Yeah.
up, yeah.
Definitely. Like my
Yeah.
whole business started from my findings and my changes in my financial practices as per my own spiritual awakening. Because for me, what happened was I was living in Melbourne, Australia, and then I traveled
Hmm.
to the US for the first time for my 35th birthday, something.
Yeah.
And I think 34th. I'm not sure. It doesn't matter. So it was in 2015. I traveled to the US for the first time. I didn't expect to have like I didn't even know what a spiritual awakening was. I wasn't spiritual at the time. I did not have any practices. I saw a therapist here and there, but I didn't have like any of that stuff that I have now. But I went to New Orleans and I remember standing by the river and it was like a bolt of lightning. It wasn't an actual bolt of lightning that struck me, but something just like my whole
Hmm.
chemistry changed. And I remember myself saying, "Oh shit, nothing is going to be the same again in my life." And
Oh,
yeah, it was just
wow.
like this inner knowing, and it felt like my entire identity and my perspective of life took a 180-degree turn and nothing made sense
Yeah.
anymore. So I'm an immigrant. I
Hmm.
was an immigrant to Australia from Jordan. So every single thing that
Yeah.
I created for myself in Australia, whether it's where I lived, my hobbies, my friends, my career, all of that was something that I worked so hard to create, but
Yeah.
in a space of like seconds, none of it made sense. Where I lived stopped making sense. How I made money stopped making sense. How I spent money stopped making sense. How I spent my time stopped making sense. Who I spent my time with, how I spent my energy.
Hmm.
And it was very intertwined with grief for me. And like I said, I didn't know
Yeah.
anything about spirituality back then. So I didn't know what the hell was happening. So there was a lot of doubt, a lot of confusion, and of course, a lot of that fear of uncertainty because I didn't know what was going to happen. I just knew that nothing is going to be the same. So I was seeing a person at the time, and he was like, "Oh, I think you're going through something very weird, and it's very immature of you to want to change your life at this point." And I'm like, "I'm breaking up with you. Goodbye."
Oh, wow.
Bye.
Ciao.
No. This felt so real in my body.
I
Yeah, I
don't
don't
need
need
this.
that. More confusion. I've got enough of that happening here. So, to your point, to where it's very scary for me personally, and what you were saying is that you don't know who to tell. You don't know if you're okay.
You don't know what
Yeah,
to tell, no? Like, because also it doesn't make sense to you either. It's a
it
very
is.
isolating process. Like, I wanted to explain things to people, but it's also like I didn't really know. I couldn't put words to it,
Especially with
really.
your personal experience with like the light and like being enveloped with love and all of that like random kundalini awakening, well, spontaneous, I would say, rather than
Yeah.
random. That's really shocking to the nervous system.
It was weird because I didn't consider myself
Hmm.
spiritual at the time. Obviously, I was doing yoga and things, but it was more just
Yeah,
like
yeah.
for movement, It wasn't a practice, but I was having visions of like Hindu goddesses and gods and hearing their mantras in my head and being like,
You're
how the fuck
giving
do I
me
know
goosebumps. This
this?
is
Like, what
amazing.
on I was just like, what on earth? Like, being visited by people that I did, or I would. have a mantra come into my head and I'd be like, what on earth are these words? And then I would Google them, and yes, it was some kind of mantra from some kind of god, and I'd be like,
That's
what
amazing.
the
Are you still able
fuck?
to access that?
Since I've done the nervous system work, I can, but I try not to. I think now I can more so from a grounded place, but I think yeah, I tend to step away from it.
Do you know, I actually have the same experience. I've so a
Yeah.
couple of years ago, I connected with someone and I actually invited them on my podcast to talk about channeling and channeling light language. And
Uh-huh.
with working with
Yeah.
them, a lot opened for me. But since I went deeper into the nervous system work, it has lessened a little bit, like my ability to be open to that. That's a bit curious, isn't it? I mean, I'm glad that you shared
Yeah.
that with me.
Yeah, because sometimes I feel like, oh, I missed this like magical, mystical moments. Like, should I get them back? But then I think actually, this was also a time when I was deeply
Mm,
confused and unhappy and unstable, would be the word I would describe. So there are occasions now where I sit down and maybe a specific topic comes up, I will
yeah,
channel, I will use light language, but not, I try not to bring it into my day to
got it.
day. It's not part of my daily practice. It's too much to be like moving timelines and oh god, being visited by
I
all
used to be
kinds.
woken up in the middle of the night until I had to put a boundary of like, please, not while I'm sleeping. Please. I can listen to
Yeah,
you
I
later.
understand that. You feel like, or would you like feel people like not feel, but they'd be on your bed, you know? I would feel like, could you just let me
I
sleep?
have that experience of like, hello. I'd be woken up, like, oh,
Yeah,
hello. You're very big. Can I go to sleep now? And the nice thing is that you're never scared. You're like, oh, I know this feeling. It registers as familiar inside of your body. So, what I find really awesome is that, a lot of people say, I help, blah, blah, dude, blah, blah, but for you, you specialize now in helping people through their spiritual awakening. I love that little, like, I don't know if I'm going to call it a niche, but I feel like it's great.
I
I
don't
feel
know.
like it's great because I wish I had guidance
Yeah,
during my spiritual awakening. It was hard, like I shared. And
yeah.
so why, I mean, it's obvious, but I'd like to hear it from you. Why did you decide to specialize in that?
I think because the same, I wish I'd have had
Hmm.
that support myself, because during that time I had three friends around me who
Hmm.
were quite open. Two of them very, very spiritual. And I felt like they were giving me like the wrong advice. They were pushing me like, connect with this angel. You need to be doing this.
Yeah.
You need to be doing that. And I felt, is this really what I needed? This constant like bypassy
Yeah.
vibes. We're all love, we're all light. And I was like, I don't feel like love and light all the time. Um, and then I had another friend who was more into
Hmm.
shadow work, and I went down quite, I would say, a dark path with her. I think sometimes I blame my awakening for being so intense, but if I actually step back and think about it, I think it was the intense shadow work that I was
Okay. Yeah.
doing. So her method was like, every time you're triggered, sit with the trigger, feel it in your body, and try and find out where that memory, where it first came from. And I had some really intense experiences, but now knowing what I know about the nervous system, I was really, really pushing myself to limits that I wasn't
Hmm.
ready for. So I was becoming more and more anxious, more and more like unstable, unsteady, uncertain, to the point where I did feel like I had to leave my job, and um, life got a bit crazy. But the reason that I started this niche is because I feel like what people need when they're going through their awakening is to be in their bodies, to learn to connect with themselves, to not get distracted by angel numbers and affirmations. And all of these things can be
Hmm.
wonderful, but what you actually need in these moments, so to have that ability to be in your body and feel, or learn how to feel over time in how to be in the present moment and to hold space for all that's going on. Because what a spiritual awakening does, in my opinion, is just brings up all your shit at once, and you need to learn how to deal with it because it's there screaming in your face to be looked at. So I believe people need information or guidance that cuts the
Mm.
bullshit. Just let's get to the point. Let's do what's going to
So
support you the
if we
most.
were to kind of like think back, what would you have told Jen minus 4 years ago? Spiritually, freshly spiritually awakened Jen.
I would probably tell them, like as lovely as it feels to sit in meditation for 3 hours and fly through the universe, you're actually just dissociating.
Wow. And what about the intense shadow work? What would you tell them about that now, knowing what you know now?
I would say there's a time and a place, and I don't think you need to be going back to every memory, and I don't think you need to sit with every trigger because this person, like, she's one of my best friends still to this day, but she this is how she works, and it
Hmm.
works for her, and that's wonderful. But she was telling me to keep a list of every single time I was triggered and go back to it. But because I was so dysregulated at this point, everything was triggering me. So it was like going to the supermarket triggered, paying a bill
Hmm.
triggered,
Hmm.
going to work triggered. I felt like the list was growing and growing and growing, and I felt like I'm never going to heal. Like, it was making me feel like there is something fundamentally wrong with me if I'm being triggered this much, and I don't have the time, the energy, or the resources to actually process all of this. So I would tell myself, like, none of this matters. Just focus on being in the
Yes.
body. Because yes, we are all energy. Yes, we are spiritual beings, but we have a physical body. We have a nervous system, and it's for a
Exactly.
reason.
There is a reason.
Otherwise,
Just
we would
like
just be floating
evaporate.
around.
There is a reason why we're in a
Exactly.
spiritual body right now. And I totally agree with you with that. Yes, being all spiritual is beautiful. However, we need to combine that with the 3D world that we actually live in. It's very important, especially when we start talking about like manifesting and all that stuff. If we're not in our physical body, it's like we're asking for a present and the post person is here and we're not here to open the door, right? Like we're just not in our bodies
Exactly.
to
Yeah,
receive. So, just to kind of
yeah.
like,
Exactly.
from your expertise, how would you define a spiritual awakening, and how could somebody know that they are going through a spiritual awakening?
Ooh, okay. Well, I think it's different for everyone. No, we all have different
Mm-hmm.
signs and different symptoms, but I think the main thing that you're feeling is just a desire for
Mm-hmm.
change, and the things that used to work for you don't work anymore. So that could be, methods of coping. For me, it was like drink and drugs were no longer having the same numbing, pleasant effect
It's like
that
you
they once
outgrew
had,
them.
or certain, yeah, 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 certain friendships just didn't feel aligned anymore. So it felt like things were
Mm-hmm.
off, and there was a desire for things to be different. And I do believe that that is your soul or your authentic self or whatever it is that you want to call it, like asking for attention, wanting to be free, free from, like we said before, all of that conditioning. So I think a spiritual awakening is just like a slap in the face. Like, yeah, you've got all of this shit going on inside that you've been repressing for years.
Back
Come
up.
on.
Yeah.
Like, feel it. Just feel it. Stop drinking and feel it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I think it's like this, like, come on, you've repressed all these emotions for years and years and years, and now it's your time to feel them, transmute them, and on the other side is a beautiful path
Yeah.
lying ahead. Because I feel now that I've dropped the majority of my spiritual practices, I actually feel more spiritual than ever. I feel more in the present moment. I feel more connected
Mm-hmm.
with nature. I have more glimmers than I had before. Before it
Trigger,
was just
trigger, trigger.
trigger,
Yeah.
trigger, trigger.
Because you were
Um,
looking for, like, you were
but now it's
orienting
like
towards
trigger,
triggers. Now
glimmer,
it's
glimmer.
more like, okay,
Of
right?
course,
Like
of
there
course.
are glimmers and we don't have to sit in the shit the whole time, right?
Yeah. But I think that's what we're taught. Like we're taught to, like you say,
Hmm.
sit in the shade. Like in order to heal, you've got to go through the mud. And yes, you do have to drag up some shit, but
It
it
can
can be
be
gentle.
gentle.
It should be gentle.
Here's where when people come to me and say like, "Do you have any tips for like a self-healing journey?" And I'm like, "Yeah, that's beautiful." But the
Uh-huh.
thing is when we are on our own, we can push too hard and that can cause
Yeah,
re-traumatization. That's why I always hesitate when people
yeah,
say, "Why don't you offer tips on your podcast about like how to go on a money healing journey on
mm,
your own?" And I'm like, "Oh, I'm really hesitant to do that because what generic information I can put out there, it can work for me, it can work for Jen, but it can't maybe not work for someone." And I'm not really into giving
yeah,
prescriptive things, right? So I
yeah,
just
yeah, yeah.
don't want people to go too far without being guided. It's that danger. It really is that danger.
That's a question. Like,
Hmm.
it's dangerous. It's definitely dangerous. It's a question I get asked a lot. Like, give me a practice, give me a tool, and I'm like, I could give you a practice, I could give you a tool, but without knowing your nervous system or you where your
Yeah,
limits are, this tool may do more damage than good, or it may just be absolutely useless for you. It may
it's
not be
so
what you
true. Like
need.
I have people coming to me with money trauma as a result of many other things. I won't give them the same tool.
Yeah,
Definitely not. Right?
yeah, yeah, yeah. But that's what we're people. I don't think they get that healing isn't a tool that you do once or twice or three times.
It
It's
is
a
a whole
whole
lifestyle.
lifestyle
Yeah,
package.
it's a package.
Yeah,
That's so funny. Um, the other thing is that during this process, many people, including myself, find that our values and our priorities shift dramatically. So for me, my material possessions became less important. My inner peace, my
yeah,
purpose, and connecting to my spiritual self, that took center stage. It was very sudden, like I mentioned before.
yeah,
So before I was like spending a lot of time
yeah.
at gigs and going to concerts and doing this and that and drinking, blah, blah, blah. It was great and it served a purpose.
Mhm.
But all of a sudden, none of that mattered. And what mattered the most is that I spend time in nature, I spend time alone, all of that stuff. So this shift really impacted every aspect of my life, including
Yeah,
how we spoke
yeah,
about this, how I viewed and managed money. But I'm curious if
yeah.
you also felt like your values have shifted.
Ah,
Mm,
dramatically, yeah, yeah, yeah. I think that's why I lost like so many friends during this
okay.
process because I started to, for the first time in my life, to have boundaries.
Oh,
It's not
yep.
something I'd ever had
Mm-hmm.
before. So I started to stand up for myself or to say no, and people don't like it. People will be like, "Oh, you're not the Jen I used to know, or you've changed." And I'm like, "Well, thank God, because the Jen you used to know was unhappy, was miserable. There was so much going on." But in terms of my values, yeah, I feel much more. How can I describe it? Just more down to earth, I suppose. Like, I just want normal things now. I just want like a simple, quiet life. I want to make sure my family's safe. I want to spend time, as much time as possible in nature, caring for my plants, being with my dogs. Things that seem so simple in the past wouldn't have brought me joy because I was always searching for a high.
Yeah. And your current
So,
fiance, thereafter, like post awakening, that you met them post awakening?
yeah, yeah, we met. She had hers a couple of years before me. I think hers was the result of an illness. So different things
It's
spark
true.
it for
Hmm.
different people.
Death, illness, it's true.
But hers was a bit smoother. I think it was more just realizations about self. It wasn't as intense as mine. Not that it's no better
It's
or
just,
worse.
it is what
I
it
wish
is,
mine
right?
was less intense. It's just
Yeah.
different.
Yeah. I think that had I
Yeah,
had a solid partner back in 2015, I would have probably left that relationship because I
yeah,
really
yeah,
fundamentally
yeah.
changed. And my, the person I'm with now, I met them actually during the awakening, but I didn't connect properly with them
Mm,
until after, like 8 months
yeah.
after, when I part of my awakening was that I I was told that I needed to wrap it up and go to New Orleans in April of 2016. And I'm like, excuse me, that's in 8 months. What do you mean? I don't have money for it. I don't have anything. What do you mean? And it was just like, so when I was in New Orleans, a lot of things changed, but one of the things was that I needed to come back. And it was very, very obvious for me
Yeah,
when I was there that I needed to come back. And I thought maybe in a year or two, no worries. But once I
yeah,
got
yeah.
back to Melbourne, I went to a concert with friends, and it was so random because this is in Melbourne, Australia. I finished the concert, I walked out of the door, and I was walking towards the tram stop, and there were a couple of guys behind me, and one guy said to the other, "Do you know that Jazz Fest is happening in New Orleans in April?" And that's when I got that
Oh
sound in my
wow.
head, is like, "And you're going to be there?" And I'm like, "No." That's 8 months. I don't
Wow.
have any money. What do you mean?
Oh
So that
wow.
took me to where we talked about how we want to spend our time, our resources, our money changes after an awakening, right? But what if when an awakening means that you have to create such a drastic change in your life that you needed a buttload of money at the time? And that is my personal experience.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Hmm, hmm.
So before we go
Okay.
there,
So your awakening happened, and then your awakening was the first time you were in New Orleans,
yes.
and then
And then the
yeah. Okay.
information came gradually.
I'm up to speed. Yeah, yeah, I'm up to speed.
So, and then my whole business happened. But I want to kind of circle back to something you said about, awakening and finances. And I just want to get your personal experience about that before we dive into how our finances can support our spiritual awakening and talk about like how we can actually do
Mhm.
that.
Okay, so I'd always considered myself to be a poor person, and I had this belief, this belief that I was poor, I was always going to be poor, and I went through that phase of like, I don't want to be rich anyway, like rich people suck. Yeah, having
Hmm.
these
These beliefs, yeah.
like these beliefs, yeah, these beliefs. And when I was working through my spiritual awakening, the person who came to live with me, the one who did the shadow work, she was the opposite. She was so like financially free, and money was not an issue for her. So it really made me start to question like, are all these beliefs about myself true? Like, am I keeping myself
Mm.
small? Like, do am I a poor person, or am I creating this persona? And well, I dug really deep, and well, God, this could go. We could be here
Oh,
for
keep
hours,
going.
but I came to I came to the realization that because my parents are not very open, like loving, not that they're not loving, but they're not very emotional, and I am an emotional person. I value like connection more than anything else. They, in order for them to show me their love, they pay me. They give me money, they send gifts. My dad would never apologize, but he might slip £20 under my door after an argument or something like that.
Okay,
So
yeah.
money for me had a lot of these like ideas around it, and I thought if I became rich, or not even rich, but financially secure, it would mean that they don't love me
Okay.
because I wouldn't need them
Mm.
anymore. I wouldn't need their
Aw.
money. I would be free. So it's like I felt like I was clinging on to this identity of being poor in order to get gifts off them, to feel like they loved me.
It's connection, really, right? The things that we do in the name of connection.
So I started to break that down and work on it, and I over time I started to just feel like it wasn't that I had more money. I had the same amount coming in, but it felt different. I felt like, oh, it's not that there's more there. It's just that I feel better. I feel safer.
Mm.
Um,
Hmm.
so then I sold all of my things.
I did that too. High five. I did that too. Uh-huh.
I sold all of my belongings, and I packed my bags and I moved to Mexico. And
Nice.
when I was in Mexico, I got very caught up in the whole manifestation community. And I think we touched on
Okay.
this last week when we chatted a little bit how,
Hmm.
you can just tap, tap, tap yourself.
Just tap.
Just tap. So I was tapping and tapping and tapping and tapping for a year.
You've got all these grooves now. I'm kidding.
I've got bruised all over my. At some point, my arm was aching. Like I can't hold it up anymore.
Oh, shit.
But yeah,
Okay.
I went really like down that path of like the law of attraction, which is great, and I obviously do believe in it, but it went. How can I describe it? I just got to the point where I was tapping and tapping and tapping and visualizing and doing Joe Dispenza meditations. And at this time, I was so far out of my comfort zone. I was in Mexico. It's the other side of the world. I didn't know anyone. I was away from everything I'd known. I'd just gone through this spiritual psychosis. There was so much going on in my life that no matter how
And the
much,
breakup,
and the breakup, all of this stuff. At this time, I was with my
COVID.
current partner.
Uh-huh.
But
Okay.
also feeling like, seeing online you can make 10K, in a month, or you can make it in a day. And I moved to Mexico with no idea, or no idea for a business, but I thought, yeah, I can make I can make 10K in a month. I had no idea how. I had no plan, but they had me convinced.
Mhm.
I was sure that okay, I can get there. Obviously, over time, I started to see that no, it's not that simple. Um, I've lost my point now, but
No, I don't think
the
so. I think I'm
no,
following. Yeah.
okay, good. I'm not, but I'm glad you are. I think the more manifestation work, the more Joe Dispenza work that I'd done, the worse I started to feel about my finances, because I felt like every like negative thought about my reality was blocking me from creating the reality that I wanted. So in the end, I felt like it was
Uh-huh.
making me sick. Like
Hmm,
I was
hmm,
scared to
hmm.
think. At the end of the day, I was like, it became too much.
You
Yeah,
just like you nailed it.
yeah,
You nailed it. So I call Joe Dispenza Uncle Joe. I love Joe Dispenza. However, incomplete.
yeah,
Nervous system work alone is incomplete.
yeah,
Spirituality
yeah,
work alone is incomplete. Talk therapy alone is incomplete. It is
yeah,
somatic experiencing alone is incomplete. I,
yeah.
I really love a combination of all of these things.
It's necessary.
However, it's so important what you mentioned is that when we are in a vortex of like manifestation, high vibe, law of attraction, we can feel shame
Yeah, yeah,
or
yeah. I felt
defective
awful. Yeah,
when we have these normal human feelings of anger, fear, shame, guilt, negativity, anything that goes under the label of negative,
yeah,
we feel like we're defective for feeling it.
yeah, 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 yeah. I felt like
And
that.
that is why in everything that I do, we do emotional work before the manifestation work because our feelings have a massive role in how we manifest and what we manifest
Yeah,
and how we enjoy the manifestation,
yeah,
right? But if we are living in a reality where we are scared of feeling,
yeah,
of where we feel like we were defective for feeling, or like you said, scared of thinking,
yeah.
that is not going to create a flowy life.
No,
And
not
when
at
we
all.
receive our manifestations, we won't be able to enjoy them.
Yeah, yeah. I just felt constantly on edge. I felt like
Hmm.
that. I didn't want to think because every thought
Yeah.
was like, oh my god, no, I shouldn't think that. I shouldn't feel that. Oh,
Hmm.
I was on edge. I was like a bag of nerves at the end of it. But then once I started to do the nervous system work and actually like feel safe in my own skin, that's when I could start to feel safe with my finances, because money is so it's survival at the end of the day, and nervous system is
It
survival.
is.
So once I felt just even a little bit back in my body, a bit connected with myself, then the money stuff felt okay. Now is the time. Now I can manifest. Now I do feel like maybe
Hmm.
I could call in an extra couple of hundred a month, because sometimes for a nervous system like mine, that or the way I was wired to believe that I was poor, trying to go from 0 to 10K in a day was like, are you
Too
insane?
much.
It was the jump,
Yeah.
this quantum leap that everyone goes on about. It was too much for my system. I mean,
It's too much. I agree with you. Like I had a day where I made 18Ks in a day, and the day before that I made 13Ks, and I'm like, okay, this is amazing for
Yeah.
5 minutes, and then afterwards I was like, my nervous system got fried,
Yeah.
actually fried, because and then that's when blocking happens, when well, actually trauma is too much too soon on the nervous system. So
Yeah.
even too much positive can create a re-traumatization when we haven't done the emotional groundwork first.
That's so interesting. Yeah, and I've never thought about it like that, but yeah, having such a big jump, even
Mhm.
though it's a positive jump, let's say, could have that effect. Yeah, like, oh, did you feel like then
Yeah.
you constantly had to strive for bigger, better, or more, or you? How did you manage that?
Actually, I how I managed it at the time was that I understood what happened to
Okay,
me.
yeah,
So that was
that's a major part. Yeah.
beginning of last year. So I knew what was happening to my nervous system, and I knew how to titrate, and I knew how to navigate it, and I had a good coach. I still do. So with my coach, we kind of worked on it, but it was like that awareness of like, okay, I'm fried. I know what happened. Reverse engineer,
Yeah, but
because it
if you
was
don't
like
have
the
that
amounts.
awareness, no, it's
Yeah,
awareness
you
is
don't have that
everything.
awareness. It is, right? But like if you don't have that awareness, had I not had that awareness, I would have gone into a guilt spiral
Yeah,
of like, ooh, I should be grateful. Ooh, that, as opposed to being more compassionate and saying, that's what's happening in my physiology. And yes, I am feeling guilty, but I know that guilt is an inhibitory emotion. Underneath that
yeah,
guilt, there are, what core emotions am I trying not to feel?
yeah,
And one of
yeah,
them
yeah,
was definitely fear. Am I able to repeat this again?
yeah.
Joy. Is it okay to be happy about
Yeah,
this?
can I celebrate
Grief.
this? Do I deserve this?
Yeah,
No?
can I celebrate this? Grief about like all the times where I thought or wasted time, quote unquote, of thinking that I am poor, or like I only deserve scarcity. So there's like that grief that came with this abundance of like, oh, it was that easy.
Yeah.
Damn.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So what I usually see is like, backtracking to when we have that awakening, we find ourselves becoming more mindful of how we want to bring in money, where we want our money to go. But we start thinking about money as a resource, and we start thinking about money beyond just survival. And it's a nice luxury to think about money beyond survival. Like it is very important for us to meet our needs, because meeting our basic needs is the a very beautiful thing that we can do to our nervous system,
Yeah, definitely.
knowing that our needs are met financially and emotionally and all that stuff. But then beyond that, we start looking at money as a tool that can help us fulfill our life purpose. Because for me, it was that moment on the Mississippi River where I knew I had a life purpose. But again, I knew also through that knowing that my current beliefs about money need to be resolved or healed, because they are going to be stopping me from moving forward. And in my process of healing my money shit, I was going to help people that are going to step into their life purpose heal their money shit. So it was like a series, of like, do it first yourself, and this is what you're going to be helping people do.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So
So you had
it's a
like
lot.
before this, you were working in finances, or you were interested in money healing or
Yes.
anything? Or- Yeah, you were. Yeah.
No, not in money healing,
No, no.
but like the term money healing never came to me until that point.
Yeah.
But before that, I had my bachelor and my postgrad in nutrition.
Uh
But
huh.
straight out of that, I worked at a radio station in Jordan. I worked as a radio DJ for 3 years,
Okay.
and then I moved to Australia, and I went into money.
Yeah.
I was doing hospitality for a little bit while I was a student, but then I went into finances. And my dad, he is a money tyrant. And if there's anything that he told me, was be very careful with money. Da 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 da, money, 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 money.
Okay. Yeah.
And that kind of got me interested in like finances in some way. And I just had a knack for it. You know, you have a natural knack for certain things, and just numbers came naturally to me.
Yeah. So we chatted a little bit in Instagram the other day, and you mentioned something about this, you know, how finances can support your spiritual awakening or your healing journey. Do you want to? I'm
Mhm.
interviewing you now. Do you want to expand on that?
Oh, sure. I would love to. Thank you very much. So, when I feel like for me, and also a lot of the people that come and work with me, they have experienced this awakening. Actually, in my one of my questionnaires is, have you experienced a spiritual awakening? Because I saw that as a common theme with my own students.
Hmm.
And the thing is, when we have that, everything is different, we kind of need to step back. We need to take it easy. We need to kind of allow the new to emerge. Because if we think about it, like it's like the butterfly goo phase, from going from
Mm,
a caterpillar to becoming a beautiful butterfly. It
yeah,
needs to go into cocoon phase. And sometimes when we don't have maybe savings or a flexible workplace or whatever,
yeah,
it's very difficult for us to give ourselves space to grow and space for the new to emerge without chasing it, like, oh, okay, what's next. You just know
yeah,
that nothing makes sense anymore, right? And what will make sense needs time, and you have bills pretty much.
yeah. I think
And maybe, yeah, keep going, sorry.
no, that's one of the things that I think pulled me apart at the time is that I knew I needed rest. I knew I needed to retreat. But like you said, I had a flat to pay, I had a car, I had bills, so I had to keep on working, and this led me to burn out because it's not what my body needed at the time. It's not what my soul needed at the time. But I didn't have the financial
Yeah,
resources to step back. So yeah, had I had that safety net there, for sure, I would have. It would have been easier. Yeah, maybe different.
yeah,
Let's say it would have been different.
different. Yeah, and perhaps sometimes an awakening is an invitation for people like myself to uproot and change your where you live, and change a lot.
Yeah,
Sometimes people break up with their partners because they realize they're misaligned, and they need that financial backup to move out, to start
yeah,
over. Sometimes your spiritual awakening, and oh, I didn't mention that, like, 3 days after my return to New Orleans, I was pretty much engaged, which was crazy because I was single for a while, like a long
wow.
time. So it was part of that, of like, I needed money for a lawyer, for my green card, and all that stuff. So
Wow.
this all was embedded, like the financial obligations and the expenses were embedded in that.
Yeah,
So when I knew that I had to return in April, I also, inside of that, knew that I needed at least 30K. I was able to save 26,000 in a space of like 7 months, which was insane.
amazing.
Because I didn't increase my income. All I did was I sold things, I stopped doing things, I
Hmm.
aligned my finances with my values, and I reprioritized how I spent my time. Lo and behold, and I prioritized what I wanted in my space,
Yeah,
which then also informed what I was selling. Lo and behold, 26K. Oh, and then I had a tax return, and then I was asked to do a side gig during a graduation. So it was like things were happening
things align. No, they pop up.
that, yeah, things aligned. Yeah, exactly. And my birthday came, and people were like giving me stuff that helped me later on save money. Like, I got a gift voucher, and that gift voucher worked in my local supermarket, like things like that,
Yeah,
that just
yeah,
like lined up. That was like really serendipitous, pretty
yeah.
much. So yeah, like, not only are we reevaluating our financial goals because we want our lives to be different, but sometimes what happens is that we might take a bit of a pay cut. Because if you're in a corporate role, for example, and you had this awakening and you're like, this doesn't make sense anymore, sometimes to tide yourself over, you might leave that job and take like more. a more flexible job. Maybe you become a freelancer. Maybe you go into becoming, do bartending or
Mhm.
waiting tables, or like something that is transitory, but
Yeah.
that can look like making less. But because your values have changed at the time, maybe you are now valuing alone time more than valuing making a fuckload of money.
Yeah.
So our financial expectations change with that. That's what I found. So,
Yeah, for sure. I had a chat with a client the other day who she worked as a lawyer, but she was in I don't know what you would call it, but basically like taking people from their homes. The homes were owned by the bank, so she had to kick the people out of their homes. But obviously,
ooh,
once you start to become like in tune with yourself, you realize how horrible this job is. So no matter how well
yeah,
paid it was, she's like, I can't work in this like world of suffering, destroying people's lives. So she had to, like you said, take a pay cut, take a step back, take another job, re evaluate her whole life. And I think that happens
everything.
to a lot of
Yeah.
us.
What a really great example. Thanks for bringing that up, because it's true. Sometimes when you wake up, you're like, what the hell have I been doing?
Yeah.
What are the values of the company that I'm working for? That is absolutely opposed to what I believe in and how I want to, like, what I want to perpetuate into the world, pretty much.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I was
Yeah.
working as a teacher at the time, so I loved my job. During that time, I felt like I could really connect with the kids, and I was making my lessons like more conscious. We were planting lettuce and growing
Sweet.
plants and things, but the other side of it, the company that I work for, were really taking the piss and taking advantage of paychecks and different things. So it's like I can't be in this environment where things are not like honest and open. Like I do
Mhm.
feel I don't want to be taken advantage of anymore. Whereas in the past, before my awakening, I might have been like, oh, it's okay, it doesn't matter. But then your values, you learn to stand up for yourself a bit more. I think, or at least I did. Like, no,
Yes, definitely.
this is not working for me.
Right? Because your values start acting as a boundary. That's the
Yeah.
beautiful thing, which I really like when that happens. So, like, so financially, I would say that if you're going through a spiritual awakening, financially, you might start spending money differently. You might want to save more money, or saving might become a byproduct of becoming more aligned. Maybe your income was going to change, maybe it will increase. Maybe by that awakening you become more clear on how you're going to serve people, and like boom, things just work out and doors open. A lot of my clients, that's what happened for them, where like they left something, they had like a scary month of no income, but because of their sense of alignment and their sense of like attunement with their higher self, income just manifested out of nowhere. So just expecting that things are going to look different and your finances can support you through this, not to think of money as something that is going to be against you. The energy of money really wants to support you in life, and it really is attracted to creativity. And it really boils down to not really worrying about the how, not worrying at all, really, and just
Yes.
enjoying it. But of course, I say that with the caveat of, is it safe for you to feel safe? Is it safe for you to feel all that stuff?
It's so hard to surrender when your system's in
Hmm.
survival, no? So there's this part of
Yeah.
the spiritual community that I struggled with a lot, and the advice I was getting from my friends was, just trust, just surrender. It's like, but now if you, with my understanding of the nervous system, those words were so foreign to me, like that you might as well have been speaking
Same.
another language because I can't
Same.
surrender, I can't trust. So I think that comes with, like you said, you lay the groundwork of safety and the emotional like
Mhm.
intelligence, let's say, and understanding that eventually you are able to lay back and allow money to come and be open to it coming, not maybe necessarily in directly into your bank account, but through other people, through other ways, through gifts, through help. For me, that was a big one, being able to receive
Yeah.
help from people, like not just waiting for the figures in my bank account to go up, but seeing that there's abundance in so many forms. It's not just numbers.
Yeah, not just numbers, and knowing that all our desires have growth lessons in them,
Yeah.
especially when they're like soul desires,
Yeah.
right? They all come embedded with these growth lessons. And yeah, I the 26 grand that I created in my the space of 7 months, I had
Yeah. I'm
many lessons
sure.
of growth
I'm sure.
that I went through to manifest, for lack of a better word, or create this amount of money. There was a lot of up leveling, a lot of growth, a lot of like growing pains as well.
Yeah.
Because what I also found at the time was that one of my coping mechanisms is to keep busy and stay
Yeah.
out. Because if I'm out, if I'm busy, my past was not, not
You're not
affecting
feeling,
me,
no?
and
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm not feeling exactly. And it was more of a case of brushing things under the rug
Hmm.
rather than there are things that I needed to confront. My tendency was to avoid. And
Yeah.
when I reevaluated my values was like priority of sitting with myself.
Yeah.
Sitting with myself really meant looking at past things that were really painful
Yeah.
and things that I was paying good money to avoid. Let's just put it that way,
I
right?
know.
So,
Yeah. Yeah.
so, so that is just to say that sometimes the pain is real, right? Like growing pain is real.
Yeah, no, now I'm thinking about how much I could have saved if I'd have just faced all of this a decade earlier. I could be a millionaire with what I've spent on trying to avoid things. But yeah, I think that's
Yeah.
when it is important perhaps to have that financial support there, in order to get
Mhm.
physical support, because it's not easy to go through all of this. And I think, yes, you can do a lot by yourself, but there does come a point, at least in my journey, where I needed to have that element of co-regulation. I needed someone to validate me and hold that space for me and be
Yeah.
there. So, and I know it's a
Yeah.
privilege because not everybody has the funds or the access, but if you do have it, it's wonderful, you know.
It is wonderful. And the other thing is that, I also feel like awakenings happen at a certain age.
Hmm.
Um, mine was mid 30s, but usually there's like that Saturn return and all that stuff. But the thing is like the societal expectations of us at a certain age. So, for example, you might have your awakening at a time where what is expected of you is to buy a house and have a bunch of children or
Yeah.
find a partner or whatever, these like traditional things, which are nothing wrong with them, but sometimes your awakening means that, oh, none of that, you don't want any of that now. Maybe you want it later but not now.
Yeah.
So it's that adjustment of like, oh, I've been saving for a house, I don't want a house, I actually want to just live in Europe in a camper trailer.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
like that flexibility of holding that emotional capacity and compassion and understanding that your values have changed and maybe now you are going to be using your finances very, very differently. And that's
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I
especially if society is like you're crazy.
of course. I mean, moving to Mexico was certainly not in my plans. You know,
Hmm.
it's not something that I felt was on the cards because I was happy where I was. I loved my flat. I loved my friendship group. I apart from um the bosses in the job I work for, I loved my job. I loved the kids, but life had a different plan for me. Life certainly had a different plan.
Exactly. And that's why we need that emotional capacity piece, because
Yeah,
that's life, right?
yeah,
Money, life, it ebbs and flows.
certainly does.
Hmm. Well, Jen, where can people find you and what do you have going on in your business?
Well, I am all over Instagram. You can find me there.
They are. They are all over Instagram.
My handle, I think, is co-regulate. I don't think I know. Is co-regulate with me, and
I'll pop it in. What do you think your handle is today?
think my job is. uh, no, I chose that name on purpose because I think that's what I want to offer people is that element of
Hmm.
co-regulation. Like I don't want to be like of course I'm a coach, of course I'm a mentor, but I want to be that space for you to come and I'm not going to tell you exactly you need to do this, you need to do that, but there's this space here which I hope is safe. Of course, safety is to the individual, but I try to make it as safe as
Hmm.
possible because I want people to feel like, to have the support that I wanted to have someone there that's just going to hold my hand and tell me you are going to be okay, because I certainly didn't feel okay. So the things I have
Hmm.
going on at the moment are my membership, which is called the Co-Regulation Revolution, which is my idea of fucking the system, revolutionizing healing. And
Love it.
yeah, it's a beautiful space. Every month we dive into a different theme, from boundaries to triggers to learning to be with your body, and we explore that through different trainings, journaling, somatic work. We meet once a month to do a live somatic healing session. We have a Telegram group. So for me, that is all about learning the basics of healing, the basics of nervous system
Hmm.
healing, but at the same time having that element of community there. And
Hmm.
I'm
So
also,
important, isn't
yeah,
it?
so important, so important. And I'm in the process of creating what I hope is my signature program. The name is Awaken,
Yay.
which is it's the big one. It's the one I've been playing around with for a while, but
Hmm.
that's gonna be really for getting down and dirty into your awakening, dealing with all the turbulence that an awakening brings
Hmm.
with it, but
Hmm.
finding that center within yourself. And that again is going to
Hmm.
be focused on community, but really going deeper. So there's going to be more of, one-to-one support, more of a connection. And I'm planning to launch it in July. I hope that I'm able to make it. It's my aim. Yeah, I'm looking
What a
forward to it.
beautiful offering.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
know
yeah.
that Nadine 2015 would have liked that a lot.
Gen 2020
Would
would
have
have
needed
loved it.
that.
Would needed it, yeah. Not just loved it, but needed it
Yeah.
for sure. For
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
thank you so much for coming on the Money Healing podcast. I heard today that it's your first appearance as a guest on a
It is.
podcast,
It
even though you
is.
host your own. Actually, we didn't mention that.
Yeah, I have my own podcast, but I've never been a guest on anyone else's.
Bop
So
that,
thank
bop
you.
that, bop that, Cherry. That's awesome.
You made it a pleasurable
Hardcore in the
experience.
money.
No, no, I really feel like I said at the beginning before we started, like you're someone that for me, I just see you so authentic online. Like I feel like you're not trying to hide anything. You are just you, and that is so attractive in the sense that that is someone I would want to work with. I don't. I would look for someone that makes me feel safe. That someone that just is themselves, because you can feel it. No, if someone is themselves, you feel it. Uh, yeah,
Thank
I think
you.
you're a
Don't make
beautiful
me cry.
person.
Oh,
It
thank
was
you so much.
the right choice for my first podcast appearance.
Fuck yeah. Thank you. That is an honor. Thank you very much for your kind words. And thanks for being here and for sharing your experience. And I will pop in all your links in the show notes, including your
Perfect.
bio, your Instagram, your podcast. And once you have the link to your new program, I will also enter that in.
Thank you.
So, thank you so much. And thank you so much to our listeners. I hope that you enjoyed this episode. And yeah, reach out to Jen, follow them on Instagram. They have a great Instagram content and it's pretty vibrant over there. And in case you missed it, I am offering $100 off of my money healing sessions for the month of June in celebration of many things. Every time I hit a milestone in my business, I like to pay it forward to my audience. So
So
I'm really
nice.
happy about this. So people are already booking in. So I've got a bunch of spaces left. The link is in the show notes if that is tickling your fancy. I love saying that. It's so cute. So if that's something you're interested in, having a one-on-one with me, and receiving $100 discount, now is your chance. Okay, signing off, everyone. Thank you. I will see you next time. Bye for now. Thanks, Jen.